Hey guys, it's Ghost Queen. I couldn't possibly be less prepared. It's not even possible. I'm running late. I just have crazy days. What can I say? So here's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to do something a little bit different. And if everybody likes it, and if I can manage to do it properly without screwing it up, maybe we'll do this every Friday night. We'll see how it goes. But we're going to try a little watch party tonight. So I still have to do a couple things. I need to do my nails and just finish my face and whatnot. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start a little watch party. And we're going to watch the Sims family murder documentary. I had suggested that if you were interested in this case, you should probably watch this anyway. It does play into the story, the documentary itself, and it has so much information about the case, so it's a really good thing to watch. This case is deep and it's involved, and the reasons why I want to talk about it, it's like a big, huge rabbit hole. So it's good to become as familiar with the case as you can. And this documentary does a great job of just giving you the basics of the case. And probably in a little bit more of a succinct way than I could myself, and striking way. So I'm going to go ahead and start the show. Now, this is a free documentary on YouTube, so you know, I'm just playing what's already on there on YouTube, and I'll put a link in the description if anybody misses it and they want to go watch it on their own, whatever. But yeah, I shouldn't have any problems with copyright or anything like that, and should be good. And then we can chat about it while we're watching it if there's anything interesting we want to talk about. So give me a couple minutes just to get myself sorted behind the scenes here, but then I'll be in chat with you guys watching along. And yeah, it's a really interesting story. And I was doing some research today on this case because it goes into like Reddit forums and shit. And I'm going to explain a little bit more why I find it so interesting after we watch the documentary. So I hope everybody's having a good night tonight. It's Friday night. Some of you may be snowed in. Some of you might be cold and chilly. Hi, Mary. Thanks for modding. Oh, and welcome to our new mod, John Cahill. Deity Paranormal has joined the mod squad for Ghost Queen and EVP King. So welcome, John, to our little happy family, our Parafam here, our Paragang. We're happy to have you. I think you're our first male mod. So Wayne is going to be so happy. He's not alone with all us women. Hey, Dreama, she's another of our mods, is here. And yeah, so let's start the show. Without further ado, hopefully I'm going to do this all right. Just give me a minute. Be patient with me. Oh, let me grab my phone, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to see my screen for a minute, so I want to make sure I have my phone in front of me so I can see chat and everything. Hold on 1 second. You'll still hear me, you just won't see me. Okay, here we go. Let's give this a shot. Now, the only thing I'm going to say, guys, is if you have trouble hearing it, let me know. I might have to get an external speaker if you can't hear it, because it is going to be running through my laptop. Oh, you can still see me. Well, that's kind of cool. See, I didn't know if you would still be able to see me, but you can. So that's good. Okay, hold on. What's happening? Why is it doing that? I'm going to try and play. See if it just plays normal.
So it's nearing 11 o'clock on October 22nd,
really quiet
1966. The Florida State football game against Mississippi State has just concluded.
My bloody volume control?
Jenny Sims is returning to 641 Muriel Court, where her family has lived for several years. She's been out babysitting.
Can you guys hear that at all?
She enters the house
I might have to get a speaker.
Hundreds of other times.
Hey, Uni. Thank you, honey. Have a good sleep. I miss you. I have to pop into your stream soon. I've just been friggin' flat out.
A coffee cup sits on the kitchen counter.
But I hope you're doing well, and I'll pop in to say hi soon.
Nowhere does she see her sisters.
We're just doing a little watch party tonight anyway. You're not going to miss much.
Where is everybody?
So, guys, can you hear that? I think I need a speaker.
And as she doesn't see anyone,
you hear
she doesn't hear anyone, her own anxiety begins.
I don't know if I can turn it up here.
And she continues to look.
Hold on, you guys. I'm going to rewind it, so don't worry about missing anything. I just want to get it set up properly so I make sure you can hear it.
And she opens
Oh, yeah, my speakers are really low, so hold on. Oh, that's much better. There we go.
Her father.
That's much better.
And
all right.
Her little sister.
I'm going to rewind it, and I'm going to shut up. And I will actually be... You won't see me on screen for a few minutes while I do a couple things here. Thanks, Uni. Love you, too. Have a great night. Thank you. Thanks. It's a wig. Okay, guys, so I'm going to start the show, and while I gather a couple of things here on my desk, you won't see me for a couple of minutes, but it should only take me a couple minutes, and I'll be right back, and then I'll be typing in chat with you. So here we go. This is the Unsolved Sims Family Murders. That's not the name of the documentary, but they changed it just so they could put it on YouTube. But obviously, it's about the Sims murder case, and I'll explain more about this documentary, who made it, and whatnot, and why.
So it's nearing
after
11
we're
o'clock.
done. Okay. Now I'm going to shut up. Here we go.
So it's nearing 11 o'clock on October 22nd, 1966. The Florida State football game against Mississippi State has just concluded. Jenny Sims is returning to 641 Muriel Court, where her family has lived for several years. She's been out babysitting. She enters the house as she has hundreds of other times. It's a familiar scene for her. The radio is in the background. The television is on. A coffee cup sits on the kitchen counter. But nowhere does she see her parents. Nowhere does she see her sisters. And so curiously, she begins exploring the house. Where is everybody? And as she doesn't see anyone, as she doesn't hear anyone, her own anxiety begins to mount. And she continues to look. And eventually she winds her way back to the master bedroom. And she opens the door, and to her horror, there are her mother, her father, and her little sister, all bound and gagged, lying on the floor in pools of blood. What she saw that evening has haunted Tallahassee ever since. Tallahassee's we got growing pains in the 1960s, a lot of growing pains. In 1960, the census says we have 42,000 people. In 1970, the census reports we have 78,000 people.
Small town, great town. If you needed a pizza, you had to go to Tennessee Street to get it. It was the only McDonald's in town.
In all honesty, nobody ever locked their house up. You go on vacation, never lock your house.
You're beginning to see the transition of Tallahassee from kind of a sleepy southern town that happens to be the state capital into a much bigger town, a much more cosmopolitan town, perhaps even less of a Jim Crow town.
We had a really chummy, wonderful block. All the kids ranged within a few years of each other. They all played together when they were little and growing up, and are still friends, you know.
We went wherever we wanted. You know, we'd launch out on foot, and we were all over the place as far as our feet would take us, you know.
Stayed outside until the street lights came on. Nobody thought anything about it.
It was a nice town, as it is now. It's just a different town, but in 1966 it was a great time to raise kids in and enjoy your town.
They were relatively new to the community. Tallahassee was a town where people had lived forever. You know, of course, people came and went and stuff like that. But they ranked as a fairly new family at the time they were killed.
Helen Solly Sims and Robert Wilson Sims, they come to Tallahassee, I believe in the early 60s. He gets his PhD at Florida State in 1961. They're Mississippians. They come from Meridian, Mississippi. Robert Sims is 42, a PhD, working at the Department of Education in their computer division, has a big-time job, and people seem to know him and respect him.
A 16-year-old kid, I didn't even know what the hell a computer was, but he was one of the really first IT people at the Department of Education, I believe.
Helen is 34. She's quite a bit younger than he is. Her maiden name is Solly, Helen Solly Sims. She's born in 1932, again from Meridian. So clearly the two knew each other from Meridian, Mississippi.
Well, she was a church secretary, and that must have meant something to a lot of people in 1966.
Helen Sims was such a good pianist that people would come out of their offices on break at the church and just listen to her play the piano.
Helen is quite young when they marry. She's 17 when they marry, and immediately begin a family.
They had a daughter, Judy. They had 3 daughters, all named with J's: Judy, Jenny, and Joy.
I believe Jenny is 17, Judy is 16, and Joy is 12.
All 3 of the daughters were good students. Joy was at that time enrolled in Robb Middle School, which is about 3 blocks away from Muriel Court.
My sister went to Rock Junior High School at that time with Joy, and she was a nice young lady.
She was very smart, very intelligent. And she had a pretty smile. So she was
Really
a cute,
nice girl.
Cute
That's
girl.
what I remember.
In their backyard was a big ravine and a big tree swing that a lot of the kids played on behind there, and the big ravine was backed up to the Sontag's yard and to the Sims yard. So that's sort of how we met Joy, because we all played out through the ravine and ran through the woods there.
The 2 older sisters were at Leon High.
I knew the girls, and they were very smart young ladies. I didn't run in their circles. They didn't run in mine. They were National Honor Society, and I was basketball, track.
Both of the older sisters were babysitting that night, which speaks something to their responsibility. Best I've ever heard, they were always considered a very pleasant, happy family, religious family.
First Baptist Church was their social home. They spent a lot of time there. They were active congregants there.
They were friendly if you saw them in the grocery store.
They were nice people. They were very nice people. nobody deserves something like this to happen to them. But these people were all American.
As everyone knows, it was October 22nd, 1966.
It was a beautiful, beautiful October day, and the wind was blowing mildly. We had the windows open, and it was, just a nice cozy feeling.
The Seminoles are playing Mississippi State.
The whole town came to a screeching halt because everybody went to the football game.
Lots of people were at the game. Jenny and Judy were babysitting for families that had gone to the game. Robert and Helen and Joy stayed home.
And my father came home just as the phone rang, and I picked it up on one extension because he was walking in the back door and picked it up on another extension. You could tell from the tone of voice that something terrible had happened.
All three of them are bound with ropes. Joy, the 12-year-old, has been stabbed 7 times and has her underpants down around her ankles. Helen was stabbed and shot and was halfway across the room. And Robert was apparently shot and bound, still sitting in his chair.
It was really not much of a sign of a struggle. There was coffee still sitting on the table. There was money sitting on the furniture there, had not been touched. There was jewelry that had not been touched.
There was no sign of forced entry. The belief is that obviously the Sims must have allowed whoever was in the house.
Imagine the time period before 911, and you're a 16, 17-year-old girl coming home. What do? She gets the phone book out and opens it up and finds the number for the funeral home because there was no ambulance at that time.
My father and I were the first to respond to the Sims house. We walked in and found Dr. Sims and Mrs. Sims and Joy there in the back bedroom.
Can you imagine that there was no ambulance service? So she called the funeral home. She didn't know who to call.
Mrs. Sims is still showing signs of life. She's still breathing. Mr. Sims is still breathing. Joy Sims, unfortunately, is dead.
Within moments, I was scared. When I saw my father's reaction, his fear, his concern, shock quickly turned to fear because it had just happened.
The Beavises are aware that this is a crime scene, so they try to be mindful of not disturbing things and touching things unnecessarily. And the evidence shows that they didn't just go through the house disturbing the scene.
The first police officer on the scene was a deputy sheriff named Larry Campbell, who later became sheriff.
And it was his birthday. It was the night he turned 24 years old.
He was getting ready to go out when he got the call. He tried to give it away. He said, "Hey, I've got a party to go to. Can't somebody else go handle it?" Because it was originally presented as a car accident with a fatality. And there was a car accident with 2 fatalities. And then by the time he's on the way to it, reluctantly, he's told it's a signal fire, which means a murder.
He calls the sheriff and he calls the chief of detective, Jack Dawkins. And at some point, the turf war starts entering into this case, and the sheriff's office personnel are there, and they say, "We're in charge of this. This is our case," and they ask the police officers to leave.
The crime scene was almost immediately contaminated by several people going in and out of the house.
So many cops are tramping in and out, and they're in a high state of excitement. Larry always seemed to indicate just that the scene just might not have been as well protected as it should have been. Not by any negligence, but just by the sheer excitement of everybody trying to do something at once.
Really, the sheriff's department didn't know how to handle a crime like this. It had never been a crime like that in Tallahassee before. According to some accounts, neighbors came over to the house to see what was going on. They found souvenirs. They pick up an ashtray and take it with them, or put a cigarette out in the ashtray, or things like that. One account was the sheriff's investigators even made a pot of coffee because they knew it was going to be a long night working the crime scene.
The sheriff's office, I think, made mistakes with how they treated the scene that night, but I don't fault them for those things. I think the bigger problem was that they couldn't work with the police department, and that started to show up that night, and it continued on a few days where they just wanted to run the investigation.
My parents sat in our living room at that point and watched all the flash bulbs go off in the Sims yard from all the investigators taking pictures.
It was probably around 1 or 2 in the morning, that I can't remember. And we heard this someone just absolutely beating on the front door. And it was very frightening. And the police came up to the window, identified themselves. There were 2, and we let them in. But they grilled us. You can't imagine how they grilled us. Where we had been that day, who called us on the phone that day, who had been into our house that day. And this went on all night.
Law enforcement was just as incapable of dealing with it as back then as the total community was. We just didn't know how to handle it. I mean, all of a sudden, in one night, our whole life changed.
The whole town went crazy and started buying guns. They canceled Halloween. Women supposedly started filling squirt guns with ammonia.
Door locks were sold out. Pistols were sold out.
We started locking our doors. We had the lock masters come in and put bolts on our doors. This is the first time ever.
And then a few days later, we started having funerals. It was packed, standing room only at First Baptist. People in our class and the class ahead of us at Leon were there.
I do remember going. I remember the church was packed. I mean, packed. And it was the largest church in town, and you hardly had a place to sit.
It was hard to sit there and see the 2 caskets in front and think that your friend was in one of them.
They were buried in Meridian. Joy, her father, and her mother were all buried in a little church there.
I went to school Monday, and everybody sort of wanted to know what was going on and what happened, and we were a little close to the vest about it because we were asked to be, by law enforcement.
People kind of looked at other people they didn't know maybe in a little different way.
I mean, nobody knew whether it was your next door neighbor that did it or the kids that you went to school with.
People were just struck by, is there still a killer out there?
Within a matter of a few days, it became quite apparent they didn't have any idea what happened.
Everybody was looking for an answer, however far-fetched and however thin it might seem. They were chasing every possible lead.
Captain Baldry lived up here on our corner, and I started talking with him a minute, and he says, "We know who did it, but we can't touch him with a 10-foot pole."
You know what you did. I know what you did. Old good-hearted Joe over knows what you did.
Did anybody see me go into that house?
You know that whether they did or not, Charlie.
Well, I think initially the focus was on Dr. Roberts at First Baptist. Mrs. Sims had had some difficulty with him, as many women did.
C.A. Roberts was the pastor of First Baptist Church at the time, and maybe still the largest church in Tallahassee. See, in the 50s and 60s, everybody went by initials. C.A. stood for Cecil Albert.
C.A. Roberts was a remarkable guy. He's from Waco, Texas. He's born October 1931. Goes to school at Baylor. Does a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD at Southwestern Baptist Divinity School in Fort Worth. He gets married in 53, and he eventually arrives in Tallahassee by way of Altus, Oklahoma, and immediately makes an impression because he wins the Tallahassee Junior Chamber of Commerce Man of the Year in 1963. The next year, he wins the Florida Man of the Year.
He was apparently a spellbinding speaker. People came and packed his sermons, sometimes just to listen to them. I mean, they may have gone to the morning service, came back for the afternoon service.
He was called out for all the convocations, the prayers at in the stadium, you know, when you were allowed to pray.
Others looked at him and with just reverence, almost messianic-like. He was just revered. He was the reverend in every sense of the way. But then they found out who the real person was.
So Helen Sims resigns her post as secretary of First Baptist Church just days before the murder. And we don't know exactly why she resigns her post, but the rumor is that she knows too much.
The negatives that were coming out were things that were brought up during the investigations, things that they found out about his background and about his behavior.
We think he's having affairs with lots and lots and lots of women. And we know this because what happens is, as soon as the Sims family murder happens and he is eventually named as a suspect, the phones start ringing down at Tallahassee PD. And Larry Campbell is kind of shocked by this, all these women calling TPD and saying, I didn't do it. Well, he eventually pieces this together, that as soon as C.A. Roberts is named a suspect, all the women he's having affairs with get really kind of nervous.
When they blacklighted his office, he was a pretty active little pastor.
Helen Sims has a front row seat to everything that's going on with C.A. Roberts.
I don't believe there was a love triangle involving the Reverend Roberts and Mrs. Sims. That is one thing people have speculated about for years. I found no evidence of that anywhere. He was known to have a cult following, according to some of the church members. If he had instructed these followers to go kill somebody, they would have done it, according to some of the sources I talked to.
In one way, it just doesn't all add up. But in another way, it adds up perfectly.
So on October 22nd, 1966, the night of the murders, C.A. Roberts is at the Florida State University football game. And Roberts is the team chaplain. And the video shows that he is there at the game. Now the question is, what happened at halftime?
Well, long about halftime, he disappeared. And second half came back around, and he was back on tape again.
Is there enough time between when he is last seen and when he comes back? Now, some people have said he came back in a different change of clothes. We don't know if that's true. That's been reported. That's been said by locals. The point is that we do have videotape of him at the game during the first half, and we have videotape of him at the game in the second half.
Well, the sheriff said we tried every route, every traffic conditions we could think of to get from Bill Campbell Stadium to the Sims house and back on the time period that he was gone, and it was impossible.
They never found a segment in the game film where he was not visible for more than 3 or 4 minutes. So they absolutely proved that he did not leave. There had been a rumor that he had left for an unexplainable amount of time and came back with cuts and scratches. Well, they interviewed him within 2 days. There were no cuts and scratches.
Larry Campbell said to his dying day, C.A. Roberts did not do it.
I mean, there were some gaps, but not enough to go to the court and do what he did and then come back. And, that was pretty quickly eliminated.
Well, I think you did it, Charlie. I think I've been pretty open about that.
Yeah. And Vernon, I was getting Vernon out of trouble.
Whatever the reason was, I think you did it.
And Vernon was there with me.
Yep.
Okay, there were several other suspects that came to light during the investigation. Howells, I believe, was a talker who kind of told his wife that he'd killed the Sims.
Robert Howells marries Peggy Howells on December 21st, 1966. And the reason that he was known as Rob Howells, the reason that Rob Howells becomes of interest in the Sims family murder is what happened the day after he marries Peggy Howells. This is according to her testimony. They're driving from Tallahassee down to Alligator Point in his car. Presumably they're going down to Alligator Point to honeymoon or vacation. At some point during this trip, Howells begins telling Peggy in graphic detail how he murdered Joy Sims first, Helen Sims second, and Robert Sims third. And she's completely horrified. I mean, this is coming out of left. She has no idea that this is coming. And she just lets him talk because she is traumatized by what he's saying.
There were several cases of this around town of men, telling their wives, I killed them, you don't stay in line, I'm going to come up and kill you too, and I'll get away with it. And so, Mrs. Howells was one of the women who got that ultimatum.
Now, how do we know this? Well, as it turns out, a letter was discovered that she had written in the 80s, and the person who found the documents was just going through the documents and finds this letter by Peggy Howells that incriminates her now ex-husband. According to Peggy Howells, he was violent, he beat her frequently, he threatened to kill her stepson on more than one occasion. Police were called more than once for several domestic issues with him. He seems to have a very, very violent temper, especially when he drinks.
The evidence shows that he was somebody that was a bad drunk, a mean drunk, said things to his wife to scare her.
Peggy is so convinced that Rob is implicated somehow in this murder that she agrees to go undercover for the Tallahassee police to get a confession from Rob. And so they bug her house, they mic her up, they carefully plan this event where they're trying to get Rob's confession. Well, it goes wrong. They don't get Rob's confession. In fact, Rob is tipped off by his daughter somehow of what is going down. So the question becomes, what is Rob Howells' motive to kill 3 people? And the motive, as it turns out, really is very slim.
Claimed he had gotten into some kind of discussion with Mrs. Sims at a grocery store that was nearby at the time, and so he followed her home and made a note that he was going to come out and kill her, according to him. Nothing really substantiated that.
I'm not buying the motive. Peggy goes to the police officials here in Tallahassee, and with a couple of things. One of which is she has a 32 caliber handgun that she claims might have been used in the murder. We know, though, that a 38 caliber handgun was used in the murder. Now, what is motivating this from her end? Why is she driving so hard to get this conviction or implicate her ex-husband? We're not for sure, but as you look at the police reports, it's clear that this man was very, very, very violent. And so it's clear in the 80s that Peggy Howells has an axe to grind with her ex-husband. And Rob's like, hey, bring me in. My ex-wife is manic depressive, so he claims. This is why she's doing this. She's trying to get back at me.
You never really know what a person's motivations are, but she seemed pretty enthusiastic and pretty adamant about putting the focus on him.
But Rob Howells is off the hook at some point when his fingerprints don't turn up at the crime scene. He passes with flying colors the polygraph test, and also the gun doesn't match. It's a 32 caliber. We know at the crime scene was a 38 caliber. And so he comes out clean, but it's a curious episode in this case.
I think that because of your intellect, that you sit there knowing whether you did or not, playing the game with us, is to get up this close, back off, see what we're going to do, or see if you catch us in the lie or catch us in the trick or something like that.
So another really important person in the investigation of the murders is Tommy Fulgham, who's a 16-year-old boy, sophomore at Leon High School. Jump ahead when to when Fulgham is 29 years old. He's living up in Atlanta, and he commits a murder that would maybe even cause Hannibal Lecter to blush. We find him with a liver in a jar.
Ew.
And we find a disemboweled woman that he's just murdered in the apartment with her hands cut off.
Ew.
He killed his girlfriend in Atlanta in 1978. He took her body apart, essentially, and when the police got there, he had her liver or another organ in a jar at his side.
Gross.
He told the police that he did so because he thought if he did that, Satan would be chained for 1,000 years and Satan can no longer be upon the earth.
Satan does not endorse that message.
While he's up in Atlanta, apparently interested in chiropractic as a profession, befriends a husband and wife, the Carrs, and proceeds to tell the Carrs over a series of days, I believe it is, that he's worried he may be possessed by the devil.
He wishes.
And after that, he goes a step further and says, I might be the devil.
He became obsessed with
He's really
religion.
a dreamer.
He became obsessed with life forces and Satan dwelling within people in the mid-70s.
A reporter for the Tallahassee Democrat by the name of Ron Stocks turns up this murder and does a little bit of homework and sees, oh, Tommy Fulgham lived literally 2 blocks south of 641 Muriel Court. And in fact, if you look at the maps, they're really, really close together. Here's a cold-blooded murderer living a stone's throw from the Sims family. And so Ron Stocks suddenly kind of puts 2 and 2 together and thinks, I wonder what he was doing back on October 22nd, 1966. Takes this to the state attorney, Willie
Having
Meggs,
some
to kind of say, look,
fava
you
beans
might
with
have
your
somebody of
liver,
interest
darling.
here. Did you know that this person lived real proximate to the murder scene? Did you investigate him?
Ron was basically a cub reporter with the Tallahassee Democrat at the time. He's deceased now, but Ron was pretty good reporter, and he was one of those really inquiring minds, want to know, and so he was kind of fascinated with this case.
My memory is, and it might be because it was just new information to me, that his research was pointing more in the direction of Tommy Fulgham, is what he was indicating to us.
At that time, he was in the 9th grade. He was 15 years old. And looking at his school yearbook photos, he was pretty small of stature at that time. He didn't play football. He was in chorus. That was his main activity. But a normal kid by all accounts.
He lived on the street behind us, and he was 2 years older than us. And he had 2 younger brothers who were like my younger sister's age. And anyway, he was really cute.
He was.
He was
smart, wasn't he?
He was beautiful.
He liked
Beautiful. She had a wicked crush on him.
Just like any normal 15, 16-year-old would do.
If you call a man beautiful, you've
He
got a
didn't
wicked
start to
crush
get
on
bigger
him.
until after high school, and then ultimately he went into the Navy. He started weightlifting, served in the military, was honorably discharged, started to have some really bad mental health problems in the mid-70s, so several years after this case.
In 1966, when the police are doing kind of their door-to-door interviewing of people in and around Muriel Court, they come to Mary Beth Avenue. Well, this is where Tommy Fulgham and his family live. Guess where Tommy is? He's nowhere to be found when the police show up. So much so that the police become a little bit suspicious about why is Tommy Fulgham, who's 16 years old, a sophomore at Leon High School, why is he avoiding us?
No 15-year-old thinks they're going to need an alibi, but I think we're pretty close to having one for him because he was at a party that night, and people remember him being at that party.
It turns out several people were interviewed about his whereabouts on October 22nd, including his ex-girlfriend, and he supposedly was at a party.
Tommy was a good suspect at that time, and it made sense to look into him because he lived so close to the Sims family and because he did commit a brutal murder in 1978. But ultimately, Mr. Stock was not able to find anything conclusive, and I think he sort of ran into difficulty with working with the sheriff's office and them sharing information. And ultimately, unfortunately, he was killed in a traffic accident. So his work was cut short.
So it's really important on the surface, it looks like Tommy Fulgham, well, that could be our guy. But two things disqualify him. Number one, his prints do not match any found at the crime scene. And number two, neither of the surviving Sims daughters recognized him. They didn't even know who he was.
Did you get some rest?
Yeah, I did. And I got thinking. Okay.
Just remember there is a delay between what I'm seeing and what you're seeing, so if I'm saying something that doesn't seem to match up, that's why.
He told me, that he was going to be, all the way for the rest of his life. We'd never be together and all this kind of stuff because of the Sims girl. Okay.
This part where Charlie's talking is important.
A very simple plan. Get in there, get out, take care of the problem.
In October
All right, I'm gonna
1987,
pause.
21 years after the murder, Larry Campbell gets a phone.
So I'm just going to pause here because I feel that this is an important part. The thing that has always gotten me about all of this is why would Charlie say all this very incriminating stuff unless it was valid? She strikes me, especially at that point in her life, as someone who is very candid and really just doesn't give a shit what people think and what they think of her. Now, I suppose it could be that she was just so desperately seeking attention that she was trying to spin a little yarn to the cops to get them to, take her seriously and pay attention to her and have her interviewed more and whatnot. Or maybe she had other motives. Maybe she was mad at Vern and wanted to get him in trouble. Whatever. But I just can't see why she would say all this stuff, and this is what I've thought all along, unless it was true. So let's continue on.
Phone call. And on the other end of the call is Mary Charles LaJoy Fox.
So Mary Charles LaJoy Fox is Charlie.
She needs to talk. And so Larry Campbell says, sure, come on in, happy to talk to you.
The reason for that call is that there was an article in the newspaper, and Mary Charles got concerned that she was possibly going to get arrested. So she reached out to a friend of hers, Patricia Sunday.
Sometimes she's called Mary Charles, sometimes
Mary
Charlie.
Charles decides she's coming back to Tallahassee.
And so she talks for nearly 6 hours.
I mean, that's a long time, 6 hours.
Well, what if I was involved? What if Vernon actually entered the house? What if I was at the house?
The two suspects that, according to Sheriff Campbell, were never cleared were two teenagers who lived nearby.
Mary Charles LaJoy, like to be called Charlie. She came from a troubled background. She was adopted. She described her adoptive parents as being abusive to her.
There was physical abuse.
So it's these two characters that have me most intrigued in the case.
My mother.
And the possibility that they got away with this horrific murder of a couple and the couple's 12-year-old daughter and never went to jail.
She was going to college in Madison at that time, Madison Junior College, and they could hardly keep her with a roommate because she freaked out everybody that they put in the dorm with her.
According to Sheriff Campbell, on her bed at a dormitory, there was a poster hanging over the bed that said, "A tisket, a tasket, come sleep in my casket."
Love that.
Absolutely damn, totally obsessed with that.
A tisket, a tasket, come sleep in my casket. Love it.
No, I don't blame you at all. I'm trying to help you.
It seems like it was in 65.
She was near obsessed with this business, the funeral industry.
Mary Charles went to Beavis funeral home so many times that they asked her not to come back.
Please don't come to the funeral home anymore. We love you, but
they were freaked out by her being there and her interest.
We think you're a little strange, ma'am.
Interest or even a curiosity to something that they were alarmed by.
Daddy finally.
That would be me in that day and age. I would be the creepy weirdo at the funeral home.
She was an unusual person.
She had no friends. She talked about with Sheriff Campbell that she didn't have acceptable clothes, so she didn't fit in.
Not that
she
creepy.
She had one
though.
friend.
She is creepy.
And that was Vernon.
Last time I saw her, gosh, she was a pretty little thing.
Now this is Vern.
I was in the 5th grade and
he also is one of the reasons why I'm very interested in this case.
She was at the house bouncing on my sister's bed.
And you never know, he could be watching now. If you are,
a gorgeous little girl.
hi Vern.
She really was.
My invitation's still there to come talk to
know
me.
Each other in elementary school and were friends. They
I like
began
Vern.
a romantic relationship when Miss LaJoy was still a teenager.
His parents did not approve of him seeing LaJoy, and so they had to sneak around.
Her parents disapproved of him, and his parents disapproved of her, and each set thought the other one was weird.
Star-crossed lovers.
He is a college student at that time. Believe he was going to the junior college at that time. He had done about 4 months in the Air Force and was discharged for mental health reasons.
His family life, it was as dysfunctional as the LaJoy family was.
He has problems with his father. He is angry about his father having an affair with another woman and being very blatant about it.
Mrs. Fox was a very nice person. Dr. Fox was one of the head criminologists in the United States, taught out here at FSU for years. He was an alcoholic.
He doesn't work. His mother gives him money to go to the movies with Mary Charles, things like that. He doesn't have a car. Here's somebody that's struggling.
They lived across the street, pretty much across the street from me and Ann.
The back corner of his property touched the back corner of the Sims property.
So that's important. The back corner of his property abutted the back corner of the Sims property.
Just down Von Seal Avenue, about 2 blocks away. So within, at most, a 3-minute walk, 2-3-minute walk, you've got all three of the people of interest in this case. You've got the Sims family, the Foxes, and Miss LaJoy.
We did determine that there was some prowler activity and, peeping Tom activity in the neighborhood.
There's an interesting correlation between some of the prowler reports.
So a lot of people think Vern was the peeping Tom.
Presence and absence from Tallahassee. The reports decline when he is in the Air Force and at UF. They pick back up in June of 1966 when he comes back to Tallahassee.
So roughly a week before the murders on October 22nd, so this would be around October 15th, Vernon Fox Jr. is spotted peeping in on Joy Sims.
So there you go.
Last night that,
He was guilty.
maybe had trouble
He was
with
caught
the girls.
peeping on that 12-year-old.
Well, like I said, like if he was back there, preying on her, like he said.
And I think that's the biggest key
standing back there
fact
under the banana trees
of the
Did he
case.
try to talk to her in the yard? Did he try to watch her from the backyard? We don't know that, but obviously Mary Charles was worried about that because she said, if I'm going to lose the only thing I ever had, they must have thought that the Sims were going to report on that.
No.
Vern says no.
Prowler. No.
No, he doesn't remember it like
That's
that.
why I think that I went in there and did it.
That's not really something you'd want to admit to, though, is it?
Some kind kind of damn trouble.
But it sounds so creepy, but a lot of teenage boys do that kind of thing. Let's face it.
And I was going to lose the
Hormones
only
and all that.
friend I had.
Here's the perfect all-American family that has everything that she doesn't have. They have acceptability. They
You know,
have
it's
loving
creepy, but
parents.
it's not that
They
bad
get
or
along.
unusual.
Their
Like I say,
children
a
are
lot of
loved
teenage
in someone's
boys
house.
get up to a lot of
She doesn't
nonsense
feel loved. She doesn't feel
when their
accepted.
hormones are raging.
And here, now her boyfriend is maybe, you know,
But
paying
there's a
attention
big
to
difference
this
between
girl.
that and
I've
murder.
been here for the last 2 days. What in the world, when he had you, could he see in her? Plus, at the same token, here was a little girl
Who was going to get both of us?
who had every, yeah, she's going to get you all in trouble.
Are you kidding?
But on the other side, here's a little girl who had everything you did. And she wasn't as smart as you, or she wasn't as good looking as you, and she wasn't this or that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
But she was so young, only
Here's the
12.
jealousy. Here's the things that were going on in their lives that would lead them down this road. Why would they hate a family so much that had done nothing to them?
If they'd been out there looking at Mrs. Sims, okay, you know, I'd say, hey, okay, you know, nothing's wrong with the guy, you know?
See, she clearly
something to look at.
was in love with
But
him.
my God, that kids, those girls are... Yeah.
So she was jealous.
If they wouldn't have had...
She was jealous that her boyfriend was interested in that young girl. So maybe she was the one
So
who
on
did
the
it.
night of October 22nd,
Maybe they
Mary
did it
Charles
together.
Lovejoy claims
I
that
don't
she
know.
and Vernon Fox Jr. were to drive-in movie.
Did you leave early?
I thought that we stayed for 2 movies, and then it went into a 3rd movie.
Okay.
This is what I thought. And apparently y'all say I'm wrong.
The ticket taker at the
Oh yeah,
drive-in
Teresa?
apparently
I
knew
only
them.
ever saw it on
He,
YouTube.
remembered that they left after the first movie.
You can watch it for free on YouTube.
Miss LaJoy and Mr. Fox were changing their story with the police officers. There are many inconsistencies between the stories. And as a prosecutor, discrepancies in fact, otherwise known as a lie, carry a lot of weight with the jury.
What Mary Charles and I did on that night. About 7 o'clock, I went down to Levy Park, and she met me, picked me up, and went to the movies. After the movies, we went to a secluded area and had sex in the car.
He's an odd man.
Vernon is
Vern.
telling us that he went to a lover's lane
Still.
and they had sex.
Isn't
It's
he?
interesting that Mary Charles in her 87 interview.
Well, wait
said
till
they
you hear
weren't
the rest of it.
sexually active.
He gets
That's not what
odder.
she was interested in.
More
He
odd.
didn't get into my drawers until I was 19.
And he's still in Tallahassee.
So when you were 19, that would have been, what, 1967?
And after that, she took me back to the neighborhood.
In 1966 and in 89, they're consistent. Vernon says that they thought about stopping for a Coke, but they were low on gas, so they drove straight home to the Parkside area. Now, he's saying, in 2016, that instead of going straight home, they actually drove out to Dog Lake, which is out by the airport in Tallahassee.
I turned in from Tharp Street on Gibbs, stopped at Stiles. She turned up Stiles to let me.
I'm just pausing. I'm doing clear, not clear, just plain acrylic nails. Just solid, plain acrylic. I still have to file them because I got some polish in a color I like that I want to try. So I'm going to file and polish now.
Me out.
Because I know you're so interested in what I'm doing.
To Von Seal, to her house, which is a block.
Kidding.
In 66, he says he gets home about 11.
I got out of the car. I looked at the clock. It was 7 minutes after 11.
Now he's saying, well, I looked at the clock when she dropped me off, and it was 11:07 p.m. I remember that.
Yeah, no one would remember
it's
that
about
time.
11. Now it's 11:07 p.m.
That sounds like a lie to me.
Start walking home.
Why would you write down what time that you took take your birth control pills, that you took your birth control pill at 11:05 p.m.?
To make sure I took it,
That sounds like they
to remember.
corroborated their stories.
Yeah, I did this. Yeah, I did this. I had a little calendar, and the day, I guess I circled it, or and I put the time down.
Anyway,
And no one would write
I'd gone
11:05.
about half a
You'd
block
round it
and I
off to
noticed a
11.
car down the road with its bright lights on, moving slowly.
Vernon reports seeing this car on Gibbs Drive. As he's walking home, as he turns the corner from Stiles and starts walking north on Gibbs, he sees this car that's driving slow, that draws his attention. It's got a funny headlight. He reports a lot of details to law enforcement.
Yeah, I think the
It
car
made me nervous just to look at it. It was moving.
is a lie. I think this whole car story is completely made up.
Down Gibbs, so to where I was eventually, and pulled over close to me, and somebody opened the back door.
Vernon seems to keep remembering details every 20 years that pass. And
Yeah, that's crazy.
89, yeah, they stopped.
I like this guy, the assistant DA
I guess they were
or prosecutor, whatever. I can't remember if he's assistant DA or assistant prosecutor, what he was back then, or
Somebody said,
when this
no, it's
was
not
made.
him. They slammed the door. And
He's not with them anymore, and that's a whole other
In
part of the story.
2016, he's saying that they say, oh, he's not the right guy, and they move on. So his memory steadily gets better after 50 years.
I remember distinctly that car stopping. I remember that as that's one thing I would swear on a Bible or whatever. That lights in my eyes. That car came to a dead stop, and those lights were in my eyes.
It is likely that they did see a car that night, and they were worried about witnesses that may have seen them.
I think the reason that you focused in on those car headlights, which you've been telling us about the car headlights the whole time, is because you think somebody saw you can identify you, and that would have been a big traumatic thing in your mind there. My God, somebody seen you.
Says he gets home, changes clothes, makes himself a sandwich, and then goes back to his bedroom where he has a TV, and he puts a Saturday night movie on, turns the movie on. Now, there's a witness that lives just to the south at the intersection of Bivens and Gibbs. This is Lamb. She reports to law enforcement that she saw him out on the street at the time of the sirens, which...
Hey, Fumble Bunny, thanks for coming in.
11:24. She saw Vernon Fox out on the street by the house making these weird gestures.
Yeah, that's a good
some
point
things that
about the
impressed me
clocks.
more than others, and what I did after I got home, got some orange juice, maybe went to bed.
He could give you a lot of details about things, but probably the single most important night of his life, where he was interviewed, began a series of several interviews with law enforcement. That would be a night that would have stood out, but he can't tell you now what.
You can call me Ghost Queen or Heather, Fumble Bunny, whichever you prefer.
Fascination or sexual preference for a young girl.
Yeah, I think so.
There are many, many, many angles to the interview. So she's painting this picture of him and his interest in little girls. Now, can you take that at face value, or is this somebody who's mad about their alimony and
that he could have felt kind of emasculated by that.
We got divorced in '86. I gave her a car and a house, both of which were paid for, and I gave her alimony for a year. Well, in '87, the alimony ran out. So she filed to have the alimony extended. The judge denied the continued alimony, basically.
Vernon always took care of her. He kept her going so she didn't have to work.
And I kind of feel like Vernon could even be still protecting her, even now.
Vernon has to die. I think Vernon.
Maybe once she passes, the real story will come out.
I think he used the weapon that she had against him.
Vernon finished off the parents. Vernon finished off the parents. You don't think I killed them?
I think you did.
Huh?
I don't know. See, I'm not competing with you intellectually. I'm asking. I'm an old dumb cock over here. I'm asking what.
That is fucking scary that Vernon would.
Should have been a poor deputy sheriff.
Yeah, that's fine. You can call me Heather.
I think that's scary.
That's my
I didn't know if
name.
y'all were still in there or not. Oh, God.
Oh, damn. What kind of bullshit? To press me, Vernon might have.
She has the idea that she could get me put in jail without her getting put in jail. If she'd had her druthers, she would have killed me.
I always
Seeing
say
me
that.
in jail for life, that would be.
If he had his
next best.
druthers. I love that expression.
As much as he hated his father,
Yeah, I know, but he's like kind of weird in an interesting way.
and commit the perfect murder.
He's definitely not a dummy.
To compete with his daddy. To fuck his daddy over. And impress me.
Well, something impressed me in our conversation.
And then I would say maybe walk in there and look at that and say, my God, hey, stupid. You know, like you said. Hey, stupid.
She's not really as likable as Vern is.
She wants to know, is she going to be arrested? She wants to know what they have on her.
But they're both interesting
And
characters.
She is very intelligent in giving them just enough to be interesting and just enough to keep the conversation going, but not, in her words, get sent to the electric chair, or in her words, get sent to prison.
She makes several statements of, well, there's a chance I remember being at the house. There's a chance I remember being inside the house. Which is a crazy thing to say.
Right.
If you weren't there.
If I knew flat
Very.
ass for sure that I went in there alone,
You do know. Well, you do know.
I know maybe in the back of my mind.
It's not, I didn't do it. It's not a denial. She's testing, at that time, Major Campbell to see what he has. Ultimately, when they get to the end, she gives him the ultimate test.
So she hints around, but what she mainly says to Campbell is, what would happen if I confessed to it?
What would y'all do with somebody like that?
She's real smart.
Give it to the doctors. I'll explain that to you in some kind of detail.
I mean, lock me up in Chattahoochee for a year?
That's what happened to
That's what
Bonnie
she's
Sanders.
hoping. Like,
I'm
could
not
I
gonna
get
sit
just a
here,
year?
It'd be easy for me to say, we're gonna give you
So
$1,000
crazy.
and send you to go play on the Wheel of Fortune or something, or make some
Well, like I said, I'm not
I'll say that,
interested.
Charlie.
I have too many health problems, and a place like McClinney or
Now, I think this
Chattahoochee
interview,
would not know
I'm trying to remember
what to do
what
with
year
me.
this was. I probably have to look it up in my
Sheriff Campbell was
notes,
a little
that
too
first
honest in this
interview.
particular instance. He told her you'll go to a mental hospital in all probability, and she clammed up after that.
I can't tell you 100% what would happen to you. Joe can't tell you 100% what would happen to you.
Could I be put in a private, could I take that $10,000 reward?
Cheeky.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
$10,000 reward.
Cheeky.
You know, the $10,000 that was supposed to be the reward money, and put myself in a private hospital where I could get quality
The
treatment.
judge has to do that. See, that's
I
why
mean,
won't tell
if
you
she
anything
was
that I
involved
can't
with the
back up.
murders, and perhaps if she was the murderer, that proves right there that she's a, you know, a sociopath. Because she's more concerned about her own comfort than the fact that she murdered 3 people, including a
There's all
12-year-old
kinds of techniques
child.
that you use to try to get an incriminating statement out of someone. One of the things that you don't ever want to do is cut off the conversation. And so in that sense, that was probably a very smart move on his part.
Yeah, I like this color
It's easy to
too.
armchair quarterback somebody that
It's
does
called
this kind of work. In the middle of it, it's often not easy to see what the right question or right approach may be.
Watermelon
I
Whiz.
don't fault him for any of that, but it's just there are so many things going on.
It's pretty. I like
here.
it. It's hard
And
to
you've
find a
got
good pink.
Obviously, a highly intelligent person being interviewed and
It's nice.
also attempting to interview the interviewers.
Yeah, I mean, to you and me as lay people, as people interested in solving this case and getting justice for the Sims family,
Oh, hi, Lisa.
it's like a confession.
Thanks for sharing your
Legally, it's
name.
not.
Welcome to our parafam.
And that's hard because this is tantalizingly close, right? To finally, 21 years later, we're gonna get police action. We're gonna get legal action on this case, and it doesn't happen.
Well, I just want to tell you, I was never in the Sims house, with the exception of one time after Bertie Nichols bought the house, and she invited me and my mother over to supper. We did that one time, and I looked at that house and I said, there is no way anybody on earth knows what this house looks like unless they've been inside of it. There's no way, Mary Charles. You could take pictures of this thing all day long and she wouldn't know it.
Charlie's the one that draws me a floor plan of the house. That's about as close as I could have drawn it. Charlie's never been in the house. And Charlie tells me things like what color carpets are and things like that, which no living human being knew.
She has never been convicted or arrested or formerly accused of this crime. That's the American system. She is at this point innocent.
I think it's probably Charlie that committed the murders.
One of the things,
and I think Vern is protecting her for some reason. And it's funny because most people suspect him, and I think it was her.
But there's a very extensive effort to try to find the weapons in this case, and they tested multiple guns to try to figure out, could we match a particular weapon. Ultimately, that may still be something that helps in this case.
I think that's why he married her.
So far we
I don't think he was ever in love with her.
This is the gun.
Doing the work that we're doing, it's easy to forget that.
But I think he was afraid he would go to jail and be accused himself.
Went to their grave, probably knowing the person who did this, and we've never gotten justice for them. And here it is 50 years later.
Justice is a very overwrought concept. You can't bring back people who are dead. That pain will never go away. Justice is often just punishing someone, and I don't know that and yes, people who do wrong should be punished.
Well, right, you shouldn't be able to be allowed to get away with murder.
The murder itself was the worst crime that ever happened in Tallahassee, and I think it's just such a tragedy that we couldn't, as a law enforcement community, as a community, as a town, we couldn't just pull out all the stops and put everything into solving this case over the last year.
I agree.
5 years, 10 years.
He's kind of strange too, isn't he?
That should have been
interesting, but strange.
For many years, I thought about it every night.
This is the funeral home director.
30 years probably.
Who got called that night?
Well, you eventually just have to let go. And you know, you can't be afraid all your life. You can't
That's
be
true.
at who's behind you all your life. You just have to be more, you have to be a little more careful.
Actually, I drove coming back from...
Yeah, no worries. I'm going to put a link in the description to where you can watch it
a few years ago,
without my commentary if you like.
And I stopped and got gas. I thought, well, you know, I would stop by and see.
I'll put the link in after my live stream.
I'll stop.
Yeah, I know. My daughters live there. My two adult daughters just moved there. My father lives there. And we're all strange and unusual. My grandparents lived there. My paternal grandparents. They're deceased now.
Daddy gonna take you by Daddy's, drop you off.
One of my best friends lived in Tarpon Springs. Unfortunately, she passed a couple years ago.
Bye-bye. See you.
Very sad.
Get your act together. Think. Spend some time figuring. Such as.
But really, these two are the ones that fumbled it.
It took you 20 years to call me. Maybe this time it won't take that long.
So that's that. So I do just want to say Let me just look at the names here for a second. The former Jeremy Mutz, that's the bald guy, okay? Because as I talk more about this case, he is going to come into it, okay? So let me just get out of this, go back to full screen, get out of there. So that was the documentary, and hey, okay, so as you can see, that documentary really did have a lot of information about the case, and I felt it was very relevant for people to see. And I'm trying to remember how I first stumbled upon this case. I fall down a lot of rabbit holes online. Like my Joy Division shirt Wayne got me. He has one too. Oh, I can't do the backwards thing here. There we go. Joy Division. He's got the same shirt. Anyway, I'm trying to remember how I first found this case. I think it was because I was on Reddit really for the first time and just kind of exploring Reddit. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. And excuse me, Reddit is a rabbit hole in itself. Don't go there if you're like me. Because there's a lot of rabbit holes to fall down everywhere on Reddit. But basically, I fell down into a rabbit hole, a Reddit thread about this case, and it was just so interesting. The whole thing just kind of caught my attention, and normally when something like that does catch my attention, I kind of research it as far as it can go. And I saw a lot of people and even interacted with a few people who really wanted to see this case more in the public eye, more discussed, and people didn't really understand why it wasn't, since it's never been solved, since it's a cold case. And there are people that are fascinated with cold cases in general. And, you know, they kind of like to be armchair detectives and try to solve the cases themselves. And I get it. It's interesting. It's fun to try to follow the clues and analyze the people. I had a big interest for a while in, you know, the FBI profilers. And I read a couple of books about them. I think one was called Mind Hunter, you know, where they talk about how they do their psychological profiles. And it's crazy how they can do that. Hold on, I'm just trying to find a cloth for my eyeglasses so I can wipe them. It is crazy how they can sort of create a profile of a murderer based on the crime and the evidence left behind that is so, like, matching to a T the suspect when they don't know anything about him. Like, they haven't interacted with him or caught him. You know, if they don't actually have the suspect in custody, yet they can, just from the crime itself, they can analyze, you know, the perpetrator, like, I mean, to the T. You know, his race, his age, his, sometimes even his occupation, whether he's single or, you know, like, it's amazing, these FBI profilers, how close to the suspect they can really, like, nail that stuff on the head. It's crazy. And I find it fascinating. I'm interested in psychology and that sort of thing. So, and, you know, I wonder why we do get fascinated with these gruesome murders, but we do. And I think it's because we empathize with the victims. I think it triggers fear in us a little bit. And, you know, and that sort of, that can be exciting. It's like an adrenaline rush. Hey, Mortis the Wizard. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, so I fell into this Reddit thread, and what I found really fascinating once, hey, Chris, yeah, I love the FBI profilers. I mean, that shit is just, it's fascinating. It really is. And the thing is that, I don't know, I can only speak for myself, I guess. I just become fascinated with all of it, with the killers themselves, and I try to imagine, like, doing the things that they do, and of course I can't because I'm somewhat normal, not completely, but a little. I'm somewhat of a human being, believe it or not. And then, you know, of course, you can empathize with the victims and the terror they must have gone through, and then you can empathize with the families and, you know, the horror that the families go through because of their murdered, you know, relatives and all of it. It's like there's something you can sort of think about or relate to with these cases. But, you know, it's just, it's like when you're driving down the highway and there's a car wreck, you can't help but crane and look. You know, it's just we all have this morbid curiosity and interest. But so with this case, I did fall down this whole rabbit hole of a Reddit thread. And what I found really fascinating, so then I went and watched this documentary, so I got the gist of the case and everything, and then I went back to the Reddit threads, and then I found other articles and other comment threads. And when you start really researching it, I mean, it's a lot of information. And what I guess I found most fascinating was Vern, who you just saw in the documentary, Vernon. He has posted extensively on the internet about this case and defending himself, because a lot of people assumed it was him, assumed he was the murderer, and he was very invested in proving, just by his own input, that he's not guilty. But I mean, he really has spent a lot of time posting, okay? And then he spent a lot of time going back and deleting a lot of those posts. In fact, I first contacted him just over a year ago through Reddit, and I said I would be doing a show. Maybe it was even a year and a half ago. Like, it was a while ago. I contacted him through Reddit, and I said I was going to be doing a show on YouTube talking about the case, and that I would love to get his input and possibly interview him. I even suggested that we could go to Mississippi, where the family is buried, and pay our last respects, and, you know, that perhaps that would even convince people that he's, you know, not guilty, because I said, you know, so it does seem like some internet people took offense and took issue with some comments that he made. For instance, at one point, and we're going to talk about more of this another night, but I'll just mention at least this one part. There is, at one point, Vern publicly referred to the murdered 12-year-old as ugly, and, like, you know what the internet is like when they get angry. Wow. You know, they all, like, they started eating him alive. So I thought, you know, maybe that would be a way for him to redeem himself, to go to the grave and pay his respects. He never responded to me, never got back to me, didn't respond at all. But not too long after that, I noticed that he was going around and deleting a lot of his public posts. And even that seems a little off. So there's a lot of weird things about Vernon, and a lot of kind of off things. And like I say, you never know. He could be watching, because he seems very interested in following everything about this case. So Vernon, if you are watching, I don't mean to be offensive. I don't know you. And please don't, you know, get upset by the things that I say. I'm a little cheeky with everyone. Don't take it personally. So I would certainly give him the opportunity to speak and tell his side of the story and defend himself if that's what he wanted to do. And Vern, you still have the opportunity to contact me. There are multiple ways to do so, and I'll put them in the description after I've finished the live stream. But we will all be talking more about this case in the future. But I thought tonight it would be fun just to have the little watch party, watch the documentary, and so you can all get a little bit of a grasp on what the story really is. So let me read the comments here. Teresa says she recorded the show. Chris says, I love Criminal Minds for that. Yeah, I don't think I've actually watched Criminal Minds, and I haven't watched a ton of TV shows about the FBI profilers, but I've read a couple of books, and I think there's a show, though, called Mindhunter that I was going to check out. Can you make your hair brighter? I can't quite see you crossing the road. It's not bright enough for you? Well, we could get a brighter wig. We probably will at some point, I'm sure. I am an INFPT personality. It is kind of rare. Yes, I've taken that test, and I think I scored pretty high as an INFP myself. I don't know I don't remember the T. Second most rare, I believe. Mediator personalities are true idealists, always looking for the hint of good, even in the worst of people and events, searching for ways to make things better. Yes, that's very much me. It's a very fascinating documentary. Yeah. So the documentary was, what's interesting about the documentary, at least I thought so, was that it was actually produced by a couple of college students who were, I think they were Florida State University college students, and they were film students, and, you know, they were given the task by their teacher to create some kind of short film. I don't remember if it had to be a documentary or just some kind of short film, and these two college students went and made that documentary, and it's fantastic. It seems very professional, and it's very well done, and a really good documentary made by a couple of young people. So yeah, I thought that was interesting as well. And they've at least I think it was two gentlemen who made the documentary, but I know at least one of them also wrote an article that I've come across also about this whole case. And there's a lot out there print-wise to read, a lot of articles, a lot of comment threads and whatnot about this case. A lot of interest in it, but it really hasn't come into the mainstream all that much. You'd think, you know, this is the sort of thing people love, and you'd think it would be a little bit more in the mainstream and talked about, but there's still a lot of people that don't know about this case. So yeah, I thought we would just chit-chat about it a little bit. So that's the start for tonight. I think that's all we're going to talk about tonight for as far as the Sims murder case is concerned. I got to do my nails while we watched it, and now I'm glad I figured out how to do that with my streaming software too, because I'd never really done that before, so I'm glad that worked. And I took a couple of days off from streaming, not for any real big reason. Wednesday morning. Tuesday was my son's birthday. He turned 15, so Wednesday morning I got some kind of bad news, and I was a little bit bummed out and kind of in a funk. And usually when I'm like that, I kind of take a day just to immerse myself in it and marinate in it so I get over it quickly. So Wednesday, I was just like, okay, I'm going to be in a funk today. So I didn't stream Wednesday, and then Thursday was kind of like, okay, today I'm getting out of the funk, and I was like ultra productive and got a bunch of things done, and just didn't have a chance to stream. So here we are today. And what else is happening? I did some private readings for Katie, Ms. Wonderful. She seemed to think they were pretty spot on, so that was good. I really like Katie, and I like to support her and help her if I can. And she did offer to tip me and pay me for the readings, and I said that wouldn't be necessary because I offered to do them for her for free. But that if she wanted to leave me a good review when I opened my Etsy shop, I would appreciate that. So I'm hoping the best for her. What else? As far as like internet YouTube gossip. I saw that Onision made a couple of videos, and I did catch up on some of Chris Hansen's interviews regarding the whole Onision situation, and more and more, I gotta tell you, I am leaning towards, I took, initially I was just like, oh my God, what a monster. And then I'm like, oh, I'm overreacting. I'm being polarized. I'm doing what everybody on the internet does. I need to step back and be objective. And then I thought actually some of like those freak out videos he was doing and everything were kind of funny. Like I did over the holidays when he was really going nuts. I thought some of them were kind of funny, and then I felt guilty, and Shan Camp had to unfriend me because she's mortified with me now. Kidding. But she had to reprimand me and beat me a little and put me over her knee for thinking Onision's funny. But more and more, the more I hear about it and the more people I hear interviewed, yeah, I heard that as well. But I think he does that with a lot of people, or he threatens to. I don't know if he actually follows through. But the more I hear, the more I feel like, yeah, he probably is guilty. He's probably a little bit of a creeper. And it definitely sounds like, if nothing else, it certainly sounds like the forum that he created online as this sort of haven for younger people, underage girls mostly, was becoming a breeding ground for other predators to come in and try to, prey on these underage girls. So that in itself, he should have been dealing with that. He should have shut it down or figured out a way to prevent that or whatever. I really don't like any kind of adult YouTubers that's going to be targeting teens unless it's something really fucking wholesome, which usually it isn't. So, yeah, I guess, more and more, like I say, I'm just leaning towards really getting a feeling that he probably is guilty, and I think Kai is equally guilty, or close to it, and certainly there hasn't been a lot of focus on her. It's all been on him, and I'm sorry, on him. They're both hims. I always do that, and I don't mean to. Sorry. And, yeah, so now he's doing videos that are a little bit more serious, and now that he's showing his true personality, I find him so unlikable. He doesn't seem to have much humility. He's not very down to earth. He seems very arrogant and kind of full of himself, and it seems he has a lot of grandiose ideas about who he is. He seems to think that he has a celebrity status that is perhaps a little bit grandiose, inflated in his own mind. Yes, he's a YouTube celebrity, but surely we all understand that being a YouTube celebrity and being like, let's say, a regular, movie star celebrity, A-list movie star, they're worlds apart. So, I think his ego seems to be not very in check. I don't know how else to put it. And that's not very likable, So I guess I understand why he's got so many haters. I don't think there's a lot of people that could relate to him. He's not very relatable. I guess I can see why it is younger people that he attracts, because I think probably the older ones just think he's a windbag and full of shit. But the younger ones, they just want to be famous and rich, and they think that's what he is, and so they're drawn to him. And he interacts with them, so, of course that becomes the draw, for the younger people. But I heard that, that the FBI is investigating him, that is a credible story, let's say. And let's hope something comes of it. And I do think that he is probably the main reason why YouTube has had all these tremendous changes. they need to protect themselves. So, interesting stuff with the Onision thing. I don't know that I have any other huge gossip or drama to talk about. Not really. I don't think so. Has anybody else seen any other interesting internet drama or gossip or anything you want to bring up? I can't think of anything else right now off the top of my head. Yeah, no, I think that's about it. Oh, I know what I was going to tell you guys, though. A couple of weird things. 2 mornings in a row, I woke up with, like, still in the dream. And yesterday morning, it was, I'm not going to go into the whole dream. I'm just going to go into the end of it. I ended up having this lizard hop up on my shoulder, and it was a large lizard. Like here we get the small lizards, and it's either the green anole lizards or it's the geckos that are like kind of see-through and you can see their organs and everything. But this was like a large lizard, and it hopped up on my shoulder, and it was like breathing on my neck, and it was red. I remember it being red. And in the dream, I was semi-aware of being nervous. It was going to bite me or sting me, almost like a scorpion type sting, but it wasn't a scorpion. It was definitely a lizard. And I did, in real life, once have a grasshopper hop on my shoulder like that during a very profound moment I was having, which was weird. So I guess it was sort of symbolic of that. I don't know. It was this weird dream, but I woke up, and then Wayne did this big search about like what a red lizard means in a dream. And it was interesting. It was just interesting stuff. Wayne, are you still listening? I'm not sure if he's listening to me or if he's watching the pre-UFC stuff, which he's all excited because tomorrow night is UFC, and the Irish dude there is going to be fighting, I guess. So there'll be no Wayne tomorrow night. He's going to be all wrapped up in that. But anyway, so that was okay. You can maybe type in the chat what you found when you looked up the red lizard. But and look at, and I was just about to talk about my dream this morning, and here's Raquel. So on point. So this morning I woke up thinking of Larry. And it's not like I went to bed really thinking about you, Raquel, no offense, but like I got a lot going on. I'm, of course, when I'm talking to you and focused on you, I'm thinking of you, and you're my friend, and I love you, and I'm happy for you, and I was happy for you yesterday. But like I didn't go to sleep thinking about you or anything. But I woke up with Larry on my mind, and I woke up very early, like 6 o'clock, and I don't wake up that early anymore, not usually. So it was very early, and I woke up, and I had Larry on the brain, and I even like spoke out loud, and I was like, Larry, in case you don't know, like I don't get up this early anymore. And I was like, I feel like Larry wants me to do a session. So I actually did do a session this morning, and I did an old-fashioned 12-587 session. And I did record it, and I did hear Larry's name. I also heard Michigan, and I don't see why here in Louisiana I'd be hearing Michigan on the radio, so I felt like that was communication, validation, and I caught some other things, but that was early this morning. I can't really remember now, but I remember I did say to Larry, you must be happy that Raquel has been married, if Larry was listening and able to hear me. And I asked if he had any messages for you, Raquel, and I do have to review the session. Obviously, I always catch a lot more on review, and it's been a long time since I've done a 587 session, so my ear isn't quite as tuned to it as it used to be. But yeah, Raquel did get married yesterday, and very happy for her with a partner she had been with for quite some time. And she had her daughter in one of the pictures I saw today, very cute. Some of you might remember her from Larry's videos. He adored his granddaughter. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reviewing that session and seeing if there's anything interesting. And of course, if there is, Raquel, I will forward it on to you. And I'll probably make a video. But yeah, so that was that. Interesting stuff. My hubby wore his hat for the day. Oh, he wore your dad's hat? Oh, so sweet. Yeah, I was thinking of you yesterday and thinking that it must have been really sad for you that you couldn't have your dad there at the wedding. And of course, to walk you down the aisle and whatnot. And I know it was an informal wedding, but nonetheless. And, but you know, I'm sure you know he was there in spirit. And yeah, I feel he knows exactly what's going on. So I'm sure he's over the moon for you. And I certainly am. It's wonderful news, and I'm very happy for you. So congratulations. Nobody deserves it more. I hope you guys will be really happy together. So, yeah, I wanted to tell you guys about that. And let me see, is there anything else I was going to share with you today? Juju is snoring. Oh, there was one other thing I was going to share, which is, and Shan Camp isn't in the chat tonight, but the last time I streamed, it was Tuesday night. If you remember, if any of you were in here that night, I ended the stream kind of quickly because there was some drama going on in the neighborhood and I wanted to go see what was going on. And it was like a couple of my neighbors were involved. And I've become friendly with this woman that lives on my street, and she has a friend or family member or something. I don't want to get into it. That's her business. But, excuse me, a gentleman by the name of Ran, R-A-N, Ran. And he's totally Cajun and what they call Kunas, you know, Cajun. And his accent is so thick that I asked my friend Tina to interpret for me. I'm starting to get it now, but he's got such a thick Cajun accent. And he has a story, and he even showed me a photograph about what he thinks is a large, like, giant wolf. And to me, it sounds a lot like the story of the Rougarou, which is a Louisiana legend of a creature, sort of like a Bigfooty type creature, but it's more like a werewolf. And it sort of has evolved from a French, you know, myth, if you want, folklore story about what was the French one called? The loup-garou, loup-garou or something. Yeah, and now, but here they pronounce it the rougarou, and
the fucking rougarou.
So I asked him if he would be interested in letting me interview him for the channel. If nothing else, I think you guys will get a huge kick out of hearing how a Cajun man speaks. Because, you know, you saw, you know, True Blood, and you had the guy there, the killer in the show, Renee. He was like a Cajun Kunas. Well, this guy is the real thing. That guy, he was an actor. This guy, he's the real thing. And I think you'll get a kick out of listening to him talk, if nothing else. But he's also just like a nice guy and an interesting character and funny and friendly, and you'll love him. And I thought it would be cool for him to share his story. So, yeah, I'm not sure when that's going to happen. Maybe tomorrow night, but I'm not sure. I got to talk to him and see when he's available to do that. And we'll have him on the channel. It'll be interesting. Yeah, I mean, Raquel, I think there's so few people in this paranormal YouTube community that didn't know your dad, you know. So many people started out watching Scary Larry's videos and learning about ITC and spirit communication through him. He's a legend, and we'll never forget him. So yeah, guys, I think that's probably all I got for today. We will talk about the Sims case more. We'll share more about that case and this interesting little rabbit hole that I fell down. And I don't think I'm going to do a session tonight because I already did one this morning. I'm getting hot all of a sudden again. I'm past menopause, so these are not hot flashes. It's just weird, though. I get these waves of like, and it's not like a hot flash. It's like all of a sudden, like my whole little bubble just gets like really hot. I don't know why. He and I were both hearing a lot of the same things, the levels of sound. I heard it first with Larry, and he asked me to be an admin on his Facebook. Oh, that's cool. You know, and he had a spirit guide by the name of Lisa also. But I had to leave the ghost boxing because of the same thing that your dad went through. It's Larry, Heather. Oh, you mean are you saying that's why I'm so warm? Yeah, you know, I know what you're talking about, Fumble Bunny, because that's what fascinated me with the 587 was, you're calling it levels, I called it layers, was the layers of communication that would come through, because I could pick up very, very, like a low, quiet, real, that if you didn't analyze the sessions the way that I did, you would probably not pick up on like the real, what I call low layers of communication. And then there would be like a layer on top of that of a different voice and a different message and a different spirit. And then there would be like a real obvious one. And that was what fascinated me with the spirit box communication, specifically with the 587. Was all the different layers of communication. And I used to get really obsessed with trying to thread them all out. And it's very, very time consuming. But part of what Wayne and I do now is, you know, in creating spirit boxes and building spirit boxes, you know, Wayne more than me, but I'm, you know, part of the process here as well. But we are figuring out, you know, the different frequencies that spirit communicates with and the different types of communication you get with different frequencies and all sorts of interesting stuff about how to get different types of communication. Yeah. Yeah, I went through the same thing too, Fumble Bunny. And I definitely don't communicate with spirit boxes the way that I used to. It's you know, and I do try, you know, we do feel a certain sense of responsibility since we do build them and sell them. And at least at the level we're at right now, we can sort of control where the spirit boxes go and who we sell to, and we are picky about it. We don't just sell to anyone. If we were to grow, that luxury might fade away. But for right now, at least, we can be choosy and sort of screen who we sell boxes to. And I know for myself, I do feel a sense of responsibility in at least trying to educate everyone about how serious the pursuit of spirit box communication is, and I don't feel most people take it seriously enough. And I don't think everyone should communicate with spirit box. But what this is leading me up to is I do feel it can be addicting, almost like a drug, and people can get addicted to the communication, and then perhaps once they've entered that state, open themselves up possibly to negative entities at times, or energies or whatnot. But I will also say that I think a lot of times what we call negative entities might just be trickster spirits. Not trickster spirits, that's not even the word I want to use. Asshole spirits, that might be a better word. Like, you have people you wouldn't want to associate yourselves with because they might have a flaw in their character. And, there's also spirits that, if you like that way when you're alive and then you pass, then you're going to be the same as a spirit. So, I think that, yeah, I agree with you, Fumble Bunny, too. I think that whoever, ends up communicating its path, that, I do think you're right. Specific people are chosen for specific reasons to communicate. But that's another rabbit hole. I'm not going to get into all that right now. I got to wrap it up. It's 20 to midnight. I haven't been streaming that long tonight, but still, this is a little bit long for me. 2 hours is kind of a long stream for me. So I am going to wrap it up. I'm really glad you came in, though, Fumble Bunny. It's great to see people from the old days, because we don't have a lot of those around anymore. Yes, I agree with you, though, with everything that you're saying. And I'd certainly love to talk some more privately. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I have an email. I'm going to put all my links in the description. And sometimes I need like an hour or so to do that, because right after I finish streaming, I usually just need like a, like a chill break to breathe. But I'm not surprised you saw an orb. We get a lot of them here. I kind of have an open door policy now with the spirits. I don't mind who comes and goes. It doesn't affect me anymore, But yeah, send me an email, ghostqueenoracle@gmail.com. And yeah, I love to see the old timers in here. In fact, we got a new mod in here tonight. He's a fellow New Englander. His name is John. He's DD Paranormal. And I always have a little chat with the mods before I kind of sign them on, and just kind of try to give them a little bit of a rundown, a lowdown about the channel, because it's like we have 4 channels between me and Wayne. And I was giving John a little history lesson earlier tonight on the phone, kind of trying to explain to him who's who and who went where and how we all got where we are and shit that's happened and whatnot. And it was just kind of funny, kind of going back and remembering like from years and years back. And it's funny how time just flies too. That's crazy. I can't believe I'm 51 and my eldest daughter is turning 28 years old. That's 2 years away from 30. That means I'm old. And it like hit me like a ton of bricks the other day. I'm like, whoa, she's turning 38 and that is way too close to 30. Yeah, no, we have great mods in this channel, and we you know what? I was saying to John actually before the show, I said, I very rarely get trolls. I really don't get a lot of trolls. I probably don't even need as many mods as I have, but they make me feel comfortable. And they help me a lot. My mods help me a lot. And I have great mods, and they're loyal people, and they're good people, and they're like family to Wayne and I. You know, we have a private mod chat, and we all talk about our lives, and yeah, we're all close, so it's good. And they help me a lot in a lot of ways. So I'm very grateful for them. And yeah. So yeah, thanks, Fumble Bunny, for coming in, and I look forward to hearing from you. I hope you all have a good night. I hope you enjoyed the little watch party. I think that's a fun thing to do, and I think I might add that into the schedule to do these little watch parties, maybe on Friday nights or something, or on weekends, Fridays or Saturday nights. I think it's a fun thing to do because it's fun to watch something and then interact during the program and talk about it a little bit. So yeah, have a great night, everybody. Sleep well. Don't forget to take your vitamins, drink your water, and get your exercise, and get your rest, and take care of yourself. It's a new year. Let's all try to be a little healthier and happier, and be loving, be kind, be generous, be forgiving, and be compassionate, and tell your loved ones everything you want to say. Don't wait, don't hold back, because you never know which day is your last day, or theirs. And love you guys. Thanks for joining me tonight. It was fun. And until next time, I bid you adieu. Good night, guys. Oh, that's awesome, Teresa. Tell them I said congrats. Yay! All right, guys. I'll see you tomorrow night. And I'm out.